No problem.
Okay, good. Anything from the defense?
No, no.
Very well. Bring in the jury bailiff.
Your Honor, it was suggested by the prosecutor that perhaps you could somehow make a statement to the jury that we were doing the best we could, if we had delays, it was not intentional, something along those lines.
And that would apply to both sides. The court made a comment that the jury is concerned about the pace. And,
okay.
But in fairness, I think everybody's tried to get witnesses here. It's just not as easy as it sometimes looks.
Okay. Yes, sir, if you don't mind. Members of the jury, as you've seen over the course of this trial, we've had some technical difficulties. Happily, we don't have any now. We're ready to go forward. But I just wanted to explain to you further that in terms of modern technology, I'm a dinosaur. I know very little about it, and I rely upon others to make my way for me. Please do not hold it against the attorneys. Both sides have been working as hard as they can to get everything straightened out. We just have outdated equipment in this courtroom. Believe it or not, the equipment was installed in 2010 and 2011, which in modern day's time makes it obsolete. And not only that, it's worn out because we use it quite a bit. If you can hold it against me, and I've got broad shoulders and I don't really care, but please don't hold it against either of the attorney sides because they're truly working as hard as they can to present this case to you in the most efficient and streamlined manner. With that, we will continue, and I believe we are down to the cross-examination of Lieutenant Bledsoe, Mr. Victor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Bledsoe, first of all, I'm going to ask you whether you yourself lost any money or assets by the Ponzi scheme of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran.
No, I did not.
Okay. So you have no personal interest, financial interest in this case whatsoever?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now, I will start with a couple of questions that the prosecution asked you. And if I may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
You were asked, I'm going to hand the witness what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 1. And you recognize that document? That exhibit, I should say.
Yes, I do.
Now, in response to the State's question about who appears on that document, you responded that only the defendant, Natalie Cochran, appears on that document, right?
As the defendant in the case, yes.
And that document is actually the judgment in federal criminal trial against Natalie Cochran.
Yes, that's what it says.
And you made some comments about Michael Cochran not being involved in that federal trial, right?
Yes,
In the context of this document.
correct.
Well, that document was entered in 2021, right?
Yes,
Is it true that Natalie Cochran was indicted on September 25th, 2021? No, I'm sorry, 2019.
that sounds accurate,
That
yes.
sounds right.
Let me interrupt and ask Mr. Selden if we need to call Dr. Banerjee. She's not on the line now. We disconnected her during lunch.
No, Your Honor, I sent her a text message and she's not intending to listen to testimony.
All right, and I apologize, Mr. Victor. Please continue.
So, it shouldn't surprise you, Mr. Bledsoe, that Mr. Cochran's name is nowhere there. He's been dead for half a year. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
So, if you say that his name didn't appear in this context of this federal indictment and judgment against Natalie Cochran, the federal government had absolutely no reason to indict a dead person, right?
That's correct.
And no reason to prosecute a dead person, right?
Yes.
But if you look at the page I don't know, there's, if I may indicate to you, there is a forfeiture proceeding there, isn't there?
I'll have to see it.
Yeah.
To make sure.
Let me show you. Oh, page. Page 14 of State's Exhibit 1, there is a page dealing with the forfeiture of the assets of the defendant, right?
It appears that way, yes.
But those assets are the same assets that Mr. and Mrs. and Mr. Cochran had together, right?
It appears so, yes.
Okay, if I may retrieve the exhibit. Yes, sir. And would it be fair to say, Mr. Bledsoe, that the federal government, from the inception of this case, oh, by the way, let me ask this, try it. I take it from your testimony on direct that you are the officer in charge of the murder investigation, right?
No, I don't think that's accurate.
Now, who was above you? Who ran this investigation?
It was a joint investigation.
Well, you weren't some kind of underling, were you? You were on top of it.
Yes, Mr. Heinzman and myself, along with the United States Secret Service.
Secret Service. Okay. Well, are we to assume that you know, or you should know, as one of the leading officers of this case, all the aspect of this murder investigation? At least you should.
Yeah, I think that's a accurate statement. I feel like I know the information well.
Okay, all right. So, in fact, the federal government had a lot of interest in this case from the standpoint of the monetary losses that the investors sustained in the Ponzi scheme case, right?
Yes.
And, in fact, when this case started, you applied for a search warrant of the defendant's property, right?
No, that's, excuse me, that's not correct.
Well, did you ever apply for any type of search of any property that belonged to the businesses of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran?
Yes.
What was that application for?
For a federal search warrant.
For a federal search warrant. And in that federal search warrant, isn't it true that, because we're now back to that business of Michael knowing or not knowing what was going on, isn't it true that you listed Mr. Cochran, first of all, as a partner in both corporations, or both businesses?
Yes.
You listed them, okay? And, in fact, you stated in the application for that search warrant that they were partners, owners, and, well, in fact, both of them, and operated Technology Management Solution and Tactical Solution Group. Did you say that?
Are you reading that directly from the search warrant?
Not from your application.
Yes. If it's in my application, then yes.
And then Michael Cochran was involved in work involving computers, network, and information technology for that company, right?
Again, if that's coming from the application, then yes, I would agree with that.
All right. So he knew, according to you, the daily operations of that business, right? Or both businesses, for that matter.
I didn't quite understand your question.
Well, if he participated in the operation of the business and knew everything about the computers and worked on the computers, well, let's strike that. A lot of the business was done online, wasn't it? Of the groups.
Which
The companies.
Which business? There were two businesses.
Well, two businesses. Both of them did a lot of business online, right?
I don't know that I would characterize it as a lot, but they clearly did business electronically, is how I would describe it.
And you testified that Michael was actually working as a computer specialist, right?
Yes.
So, isn't it true that he did a lot of business online for both of these companies?
I don't know the answer to that one.
You don't know how to answer that one. Okay? Then, you know that Michael and Natalie were signatories to their bank statements, right?
Yes.
And both of them had the accounts in First Community Bank, right?
I'm not sure exactly which accounts you're referring to, but
Let's say First Community Bank business account number, 4 last digit 4272, opened on July 1st, 2013. Authorized signers being Michael B. Cochran and Natalie Cochran, whose address is blah, blah, blah. Well, they were both on the account. of the business, right?
If you're referring to something from 2013, from memory, I can't recall
Let's
seeing that.
Well, let me show you this document. Is this your application for a search warrant, sir? The last page, it has place for you to sign. This is the document we received from.
Yes, it is.
All right. So look at that page. Look at these accounts. Who are the owners of these accounts?
You want a specific account?
Yeah, let's go down the list. Let's see what we can find out.
You want me to read them off?
Well, let's see the first bank.
First Community Bank, signors being Michael B. Cochran and Natalie P. Cochran.
Okay. And what's the account number on it? Last four digits.
0715.
Okay. The second account.
4274.
What bank is that?
First Community Bank.
Okay. Is there any other bank?
Not until the next paragraph, no, sir.
Well, let's go to the next paragraph then. What's that bank?
First Community Bank.
Okay. So that's another account where they're both owners of the account?
Yes.
All right. What's the next one?
City National Bank.
And these are all, by the way, the accounts for the business, right? Or the businesses. These are not some separate personal accounts, are they?
Yes, some of them designate that they are connected to a business, and then some just appear to be personal.
Okay. May I? First Community Bank, that was a personal account. But account number 4274 is Technology Management Solution. That's the account for the business, isn't it?
I don't know exactly what that was for, but it's what on that document, that business name does appear in that paragraph, yes.
This is a business account for the TMS, right? Yes or no?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay. And then we have City National Bank, business account, 9705, Technology Management Solution, opened in February of 2018. Authorized signers being Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran. That sounds like a business account, right?
Yes, yes it does.
City National Bank, account number 3517, Tactical Solution Group LLC. Open September 27th. Authorized signers being Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran, whose address is, etc., etc. That appears to be a bank account, right?
Correct.
Okay. Branch Banking and Trust, BB&T. Finally, I know what that stands for. BB&T, 1402 account number for Tactical Solution Group, opened September 26, 2018. Authorized signers being Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran.
Correct.
That's a business account.
Yes.
Both of them, right?
Yes.
Another BB&T 1410. Technology Management Solution, DBA TMS, opened September 26, 2018. Authorized signers being Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran. That appears to be a business account, right?
Yes.
Then Morgan Chase Bank, 8236 account number for Tactical Solution Group, LLC, DBA, doing business as TSG, open December 19, 2018. Authorized signers, again, Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran. That seems to be another banking account. I mean, a business account
Yes.
for both of them.
Correct.
All right. And Michael Cochran actually had access to all of these accounts, right?
Based on that information, I would think so, yes.
Well, you were here all throughout the testimony. You saw the exhibits. There, Michael Cochran signed all these checks, right?
Yes,
For all of the employees and all of the people who rendered services on his behalf, right?
that's correct.
Okay. Then in your petition for search warrant, you stated that during the Cochran's outwardly lavish lifestyle, Cochran's plural, houses, vehicles, philanthropic activities increased and became noticeable by friends, family, and the local community. You state the Cochrans were active in the community sports, acting as coaches, teams, volunteers, board members, and the Cochrans would supply uniforms, equipment, supplies for the Little League teams, etc., etc. Both of them, right?
That's coming directly from the application.
Well, there you go.
Then yes, that's correct.
Well, so they had a lavish lifestyle. We'll come back to that. January 2018, the Cochrans purchased a commercial building together, right? For $66,000.
Yes,
Where did that money come from?
that money came from investments.
Investments, right? And then they purchased another, they purchased three buildings total, right? For which the money came from, two buildings, for which the money came from the investments, right?
I don't recall exactly how many, sir.
Okay. And then investors gave him between December 7, 2017 and March 2018, $230,000. Is that true?
Yes,
And you claim through your testimony that they used the money for the lifestyle. Both of them.
that's
right?
what the money at that time was being used for.
That's right. Now, you also state that the Cochrans claimed to have sold such high volume of firearms to the government that their firearm supplies and manufacturers rewarded them with the discounts up to 75% for Glock, Kimber, Ruger, Smith & Wesson. And the Cochrans never sold a gun to anybody or a firearm, right?
No, I don't believe that's correct.
Well, they sold some, but
Yes.
certainly not the volume that they claimed, right?
No, we knew that they didn't sell that volume.
Okay. And would you agree with me, sir, that Natalie Cochran knew absolutely nothing about firearms or weapons in your thorough investigation of this case?
Objection, Your Honor, that calls for speculation. You can't speak to what the defendant did or did not know.
Oh, this is the whole case is about what the defendant knew.
I'll allow it. I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Could you repeat that, sir?
Well, Natalie Cochran did not ever talk to you, or you have no evidence that she knew anything about armor, weapons, guns, firearms, military outfits. She didn't know anything about it.
That's not correct.
No, she knew intimately what the firearms were like, what she was dealing with, what she was selling. She knew that. Is that your testimony here today?
I wouldn't characterize it as how intimately or whatever words you used, but no, that's not accurate. She did have some knowledge of firearms and trying to negotiate firearms sales with the local police department.
Okay. But Michael was the man. He knew about the firearms. He knew about the tactical gear, right?
I don't know that. I never
No?
spoke to him about that.
Well, he was enamored with firearms, with weapons. True?
I don't know, sir.
You don't know that. Well, in the thorough investigation of this case, did you ever learn that Michael was indeed involved in the firearm business?
The information that I saw was that the defendant was trying to negotiate a sale of firearms with the Raleigh County Sheriff's Department, and there was information also that she was trying to negotiate a deal for a firearms sale with the West Virginia State Police, which was completely fictitious.
And Michael knew nothing about it. He who handles firearms, who made his, well, did you know that he was proud and advised everybody to watch the movie called Warlords about the firearms deals. That was one of his favorite movies. Did you know that?
Yes, I believe the name of the movie is actually War Dogs.
War Dogs.
That was
Oh,
brought
I'm sorry.
to
I know that
to
one
my
myself.
attention during the
Not
investigation.
up on my cinematographic gems, but that was something that Michael really loved because he was enamored with firearms, and that's what he tried to establish his business in, right?
I can't answer that.
Cannot answer that. Now, licenses, were they applied to both of the defendants? Licenses for the business licenses, were they in the name of Michael Cochran? Well, you investigated this case.
I'm trying to figure out which business you're referring
Well, any
to.
business licenses, were they ever signed or issued to Mr. Cochran?
I can't recall that from memory. If you have something you're referring to that I could view.
No, I'm just asking you whether you recall.
No, I can't recall that from memory.
Now, is it true that at some point Mr. Cochran commingled or participated in commingling the personal accounts and the business accounts?
I can't say that he did or he didn't.
Well, in paragraph 71 for your application for the warrant, the Cochrans commingled their day-to-day and personal expenditures in all of their business accounts.
Then yes.
You said that.
Okay, yes.
So they commingle the accounts, so they wouldn't even know what is theirs, what is the business's. What is the investor's money, what is theirs, right?
I don't know if that's a fair assessment of that information.
Well, but if they commingle their funds, well, then one day when Mr. Cochran wants to pay for his, shall we say, lunch, and wants to pay by check, which is kind of outmoded today, but wants to pay by check, he doesn't know whether he's paying actually with the money from the investors or whether he's paying with his own money. Or does he know?
No, I wouldn't know how he would know which money it is.
Well, let's say that's the money that he received, let's say, from his parents for $44,000. And he puts it in his personal account or the commingled account. Wouldn't he know that that money is from the investors, i.e. his parents, and he cannot touch it because it should be in a separate account?
No, that money was given to the company for investments into government contracts through Tactical Solutions Group business or the Technology Management Solutions business.
So how many times did Mr. Cochran actually receive the money from the investors himself? Here comes Johnny investor and says, Michael, here's a check I'm going to give you for the investment. How many times did something like that happen?
Again, I can't recall that from memory, sir.
Well, you don't know. All right, you cannot recall. And wouldn't, I'm looking at that form that you signed to, and the expenditure of that TMS or whatever, the two businesses is over $1,100,000 plus, $1,123,517.07 for all kinds of things. For the Toyota, that was their car. For getting some cash. Polaris. Horse trailer. Earrings. Easy loader. Heating and cooling. These are the expenses that the TMS incurred over the years, and those were the expenses that you yourself claim came out of the illegal proceeds. Right?
It came out of the business accounts.
Business accounts that they both controlled. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, when the federal government finally looked at the harvest of your hard work, the federal government claimed that both of the defendants enjoyed the proceeds of the account, right? Or accounts. True?
Yes.
Yes. And then just happened that while the federal government was ready to indict them both, in September of 2019, Mr. Cochran unexpectedly died, right?
That's not correct.
No? All right. You've been involved in federal investigation of the cases, sir, haven't you?
Of other cases?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're telling this jury that if there is ever a couple, husband and wife, who are cheating on taxes, let's say, or who are involved in some, money laundering or some other financial scheme, you are telling us that from your experience that the federal government would only investigate one and not the other? Is that your understanding of the federal investigation, sir?
It would depend upon the evidence that was set forth in each investigation. I've seen it go both directions.
You have seen the cases where the couples, married couples, are investigated individually? You really have?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I've conducted those myself.
And in fact, the federal government, you have no evidence to suggest, sir, that the federal government would not have indicted Mr. Cochran had he been dead by September 25th of 2019.
No, I don't believe that he would have.
He would not have been indicted. Even though the federal government was looking at all of his property that he enjoyed and had at his disposal and purchased with the proceeds of illegal transactions. You do not believe that he would have been charged with these offenses?
No, but I don't believe that there was evidence to support that.
No, just to the contrary. Would you agree with me that, as we have already heard in this court, this couple lived a lifestyle of the rich and famous? They had purchases amounting to literally a couple of $1 million, right?
I would say that's fairly accurate, yes.
And that couple had purchases that were not some piddly little items. You know, when Mr. Cochran was buying Natalie a ring, he didn't buy a $500 ring. He bought a $14,000 ring, right?
I actually don't know who purchased the ring or a
Okay.
ring.
When he bought the real property, it wasn't some ramshackle affair somewhere in some holler somewhere. It was a big time property.
Actually, he wasn't able to complete transactions on property that he was trying to purchase because he couldn't complete the sale because the money was not available to do that, and he believed that it was.
I see. But he managed somehow to get himself a couple of motorcycles, well, several motorcycles, a couple of cars, including the antiques. He was somehow able to remodel his, $300,000 house, right? He was able to do all of this financially from his income that we still cannot determine.
He believed his income was coming from the proceeds of the legitimate business that he believed he operated, doing government contracts and receiving payment back from the government based on those contracts, which was not true.
And of course, you're in his head and you know what he was thinking. That's your testimony?
No, sir, I'm not saying that.
Now, the federal government didn't take kindly to any of this, and the federal government asked for the forfeiture of all of that property, didn't it?
Yes.
And for that matter, the federal government asked for the forfeiture of assets. Well, let's start with the let's start with $523,343. And no, I'm sorry, it's the assets 523, 343, 361. What is it? $523 million?
That doesn't sound accurate. I'm
Well-
not sure what you're referring to.
Well, I show you the forfeiture
Yes.
that the federal government filed against the Cochrans. Can I approach?
Yes, you may.
I always suck at math. But would you please read this? The Cochrans listed their assets as how much?
Yes. I'm sorry. Listed as $522,091,571, and that was not true.
I didn't ask you whether it was true. It's in the federal forfeiture proceedings.
Yes.
And it was signed by the assistant U.S. attorney. You think she made it up?
No.
Somehow?
No.
Well, so they listed assets to the tune of $500 billion with a B, like boy, $1 billion.
Yes.
Let's say, Mr. Bledsoe, that I'm coming home and my wife tells me, our assets are $500 million today. shouldn't I be surprised?
Yes, I would be surprised and
So
question it.
Mr. Cochran looks at these assets that are listed. We have $500 million in assets. What the heck are we doing in West Virginia? We should be somewhere, I don't know, in Monte Carlo, some other place. $500 million, sir. And he didn't know about all these assets?
I don't know if he listed that or not. This document was filed in July of 2019 after Mr. Cochran's death.
Well, these assets, these $500 million, didn't. You know the saying, Rome wasn't built in one day. That $523 million did not grow in the bank or wherever it was in one day, right?
No, that information came from documentation that the defendant had tried to use as part of the federal indictment in which he was charged.
Well, as we agreed before, my gal was a pretty bad girl, right? My client here, she was a fraud, right?
I'm not here to judge anyone, sir.
Okay. Now, I just want to ask you a couple of questions in regard to your testimony here today. You said that you were surprised. You found it odd when my client told you that her husband used to inject himself with insulin, right?
Yes,
Especially that it was in the back, right?
that's correct.
And you found the word back somewhat objectionable, right? You found it odd.
Yes, it didn't seem like something that I expected to hear.
Or maybe she was just trying to be polite. Maybe she didn't want to use the word hip or leg, or maybe a good old word butt, or maybe, for that matter, the word that starts with an A and has 3 letters in it. Maybe she was just trying to be polite. And she said, well, it was in the back.
That's what she said, yes.
Yeah. That did not really seem odd to you, did it? It didn't seem odd that it seemed odd that he would inject himself with insulin?
It seemed odd to me, yes, because he was not a diabetic that I was aware of, and I had never heard of anyone injecting themselves with insulin for workout or
Never.
bodybuilding purposes. No, sir, I'd never heard of it.
Never. Okay. All right. Fair enough. You testified on direct here that you found it suspicious that my client and Michael did not go to the meeting with that fine banker that just testified here a couple of days ago. You found it odd.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, they were supposed to go and meet the banker, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
But they didn't because Natalie was sick.
That's correct.
That's correct. And would it surprise you if you knew that the account wasn't even open? There was nothing to discuss about the account.
No, that wouldn't surprise me one bit.
And for that matter, do you have any idea that Natalie went to the doctor not on the day when Mr. Cochran collapsed in his home, but the day before? Did you know that?
Yes, she went on the 5th and the 6th.
So she went there on the 5th and on the 6th. And she complained about all kinds of problems, bad enough for the doctor to give her a shot and give her medication. Right?
I think that's accurate, yes.
Okay. So all of these shenanigans which you accuse her of, including not being able to go to meet the banker in Virginia and all of that, can be simply explained by the fact that she was ill or sick, and the doctor who gave her the medication pretty much told her to stay in bed. And she was really genuinely ill or genuinely sick. Wouldn't that be a fair explanation, sir?
I don't know what the physician may have told her. But I know that Mr. Cochran was trying to continue that trip without her, along with Mr. Davis if necessary.
And for that matter, did you know that Mr. Cochran himself didn't want to go without Natalie?
I believe he indicated that he would prefer that she go.
He indicated that he wanted to go with Natalie, and that's why he didn't go. Not because he had some suspicion that she was going to execute him that day, right?
No, he wanted to go to the Bank of America to try to find out why he was not receiving the funds that he thought he had been told that $1.4 billion was going to be deposited into that account after February the 1st.
Could it be that maybe because he bought himself a 1964 Cobra, there was no money in that account?
The Cobra, I believe, was purchased before there was any dealing with Bank of America.
Maybe because he bought himself a couple of nice motorcycles. That's why there was no money in that account.
I don't know why there's no money in that account. Well, actually, I do know why there was no money in that account, because the basis for any funding coming to that account, as you heard from Mr. Nixon as well, was that it was supposed to be coming from payments for government contracts and returns on investments. The contracts were never
Bledsoe.
done, and there was no money ever coming.
Mr. Bledsoe, did you listen to that banker? There was no account, was there? There was no account, was there?
I don't
They
know if
haven't
I don't know if the
established
count was, that was the process. He explained, the way I understood his explanation is they were in the process of trying to open an account, and he had vetted the information that he was provided
Mr.
by the
Bledsoe,
defendant.
as we stand here today, as I stand here today, as you sit there, as you remember the testimony of that banker, there was no account. You can be in the process of doing something, but that doesn't make it necessarily so, sir. They had no account. True?
No, I don't think that's true.
Okay. You're telling us that they had the bank in Virginia already established, and they were ready to pounce on the banker in Virginia to figure out why there was no money there. Is that what it was? Is that your testimony?
That Michael Cochran was wanting to travel to that bank and meet with Mr. Nixon to try to find out why there was no money in that account.
As the lead investigator in this case, show the jury any document that would establish that the account in the Virginia, Lynchburg, Virginia bank was already in existence. Can you do that?
I can,
Yes or no?
as I'm sitting here right now, I can't.
No. No, you cannot do it because they needed what is known as wet signatures, right? The signatures in writing.
Yes, I remember that.
Many banks require that a person appear in person to open an account.
Yes, Michael Cochran had told the defendant that since she was sick, he would travel on and get that signature information and bring it back so she could sign hers as well. He was determined to get this done.
He was determined, and yet he didn't go. Right? Okay. Now, that little bottle of the substance that you testified to was not insulin, that you received from Mr. and Mrs. Bolt. What was it?
I can't pronounce the name that the chemist from the FBI lab identified
And
it as.
clofamine, if I pronounce it, I
That-
probably mispronounce it with my inflection anyway. So, and clofamine,
That was how it was labeled, but you asked me about the substance in the bottle, I believe, and
Okay.
that was identified to be
Well, that
something
was-
different than the label.
well, that was the substance to fight the waning testosterone, right?
I don't know what that's for.
Well, you investigated this case. You're claiming that my client killed her husband with a substance, and you would not be curious to know the effects of the medication that you just found?
Yes, that's exactly why we submitted it for testing.
Okay, well, so now you know that this substance is designed to, help the macho man, be a macho man. The testosterone medication, right?
I can't say that I know that personally. I can say that what I heard testified to here by the chemist, that would be the basis of my knowledge of that.
And
substance.
certainly, that could not be the medication that killed this guy, because that medication makes a person combative, right?
Your Honor, he's asking him to testify as to medical knowledge that he has clearly stated he does not have.
You don't know what that medication is.
Sustained.
Right, fine.
I do have limited
Hold on, no
knowledge.
questions pending. You testified on direct that you believe that Natalie's statement concerning her cancer is false.
In the context of the time that it was being reported by her, I believe my testimony was that I hadn't obtained any evidence to support that.
Well, did you get any evidence from Duke University?
I believe we subpoenaed, off the top of my head, I can't remember without reviewing it, but I believe we did subpoena some documents from Duke.
And did she have anything that resembled cancer?
I don't recall
You
that.
don't recall. Now, did you know that she first went to the Cleveland Clinic?
I remember references to the Cleveland Clinic in the text messages, but I don't know if she ever actually went there. I don't think we subpoenaed any documentation from Cleveland Clinic.
And do you know whether she was accepted or rejected there?
No, I do not know that.
And if she was rejected for such insidious purpose as lack of insurance, that still would not change the fact that she may have had cancer. Right?
I can't answer that.
And if she then went to Duke, you don't know whether she had cancer or not. You're just speculating here.
No, I'm basing my answer off of documents that I
By the way,
reviewed
how did you get into her medical records, sir?
with a subpoena.
With a subpoena? So which doctors did you subpoena for her medical records?
There were quite a few. I would have to see a list of those to actually recite them back, but there were several.
And you're testifying here today that she was, and at least from your surreptitious review of her medical records, that she is a model of health.
No, sir, I'm not saying that.
Well, what's wrong with her? What was wrong with her at that time?
The one thing that I do recall that I remember from that is that she was having treatment for some type of heart issue and a heart ablation.
Did you obtain the records from Mount General Oncology?
Again, possible, but I don't, just can't remember that
Well,
without
I mean,
having a list of them.
I think we all know what oncology means, right?
Did you say oncology?
Oncology, yeah.
Yes, I'm very familiar with that word.
Yeah. That's one of the worst words that you ever want to hear in your life, right?
Yes, it is.
That's a place that deals with cancer, with an illness for which there is no universal care, sir. Right? And if that woman went to Mount Oncology, she wasn't there to ask for candy. She went there to ask for medical advice concerning a condition which may end up her life. True?
I don't know. I can't speak to those
And you
records or a visit if I can't
And you
see
don't
it.
know, yet stubbornly you refuse to acknowledge that this woman may have had a condition of which you have no clue, no idea. Right?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that based on the information that I had and was provided, I didn't see anything that indicated that.
Do you ever submit it to any doctors for any review of Ms. Cochran's medical conditions? Or you just evaluated it yourself?
I don't believe I think the only records that we submitted to any doctors were for Mr. Cochran.
Okay. All right. I want to ask you a little bit about, you said several times that based on my investigation, remember saying that several times?
I do.
You do. Well, who lived in Cochran's household in the year of, let's say, 2018?
I can't say for certain who actually lived in the household. I was never in their household
All right,
in
let me make
2008.
it simple. Do they have any children?
Yes,
Did you interview any of these children?
I did.
However many children they had?
I did not.
You did not. Wouldn't that be an invaluable source of information concerning their lifestyles, drug consumption at home, health of their parents? Would have been, and these children are now, one of them is still 17, but one is 20. So a couple of years ago, they were still 15, 13, 14. You could have asked them all kinds of questions, but you didn't interview them, did you?
No, we did not.
No. Did you know, and I'm going to refer to these texts. Oh, by the way, let me ask you this. Do you have any idea whether Michael Cochran was a dominant figure in the marriage? Or was it Natalie Cochran who was dominant in that marriage?
I can offer no observation on that either way.
If I told you that in August of 2018, the phone that Natalie Cochran had was actually taken from her by her husband, would you believe that?
I don't know whether to believe it or not. I don't know the source of that information.
Would I, if I told you that Mr. Cochran controlled Miss Cochran's use of the computer, would you have any evidence to contradict that?
That he controlled her use?
Controlled the use of the computers at home?
No.
Would you have any evidence to contradict that Mr. Cochran actually had the phone that belonged to Mrs. Cochran for about 2 months before he even let her use it again?
I have no information about that.
And would you have any information to contradict the proposition that these messages that you played were actually sent by Mr. Cochran rather than Mrs. Cochran?
No, I don't believe that.
You don't believe that? All right. In your thorough investigation of this case, and since you have such knack for getting medical records, did you obtain the medical records of Mr. Cochran's?
Yes, we did obtain several medical records for Mr. Cochran.
What happened to him in 2017?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Well, did he have a back surgery in 2017? Do you recall that from looking at this?
Actually, I believe I recall that from hearing it here during this proceeding.
Well, you have any reason to doubt that?
Doubt that he had a back surgery?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And I think we've established it already that on October 31st, Mr. Cochran went to the hospital with some mysterious conditions that couldn't be accounted for.
Yes.
And those conditions may have involved convulsions, maybe epilepsy, right? Whatever it was serious.
I recall that there were numerous suspicious or, I guess, symptoms would be a better word, that were part of that. But my recollection of that is that there was no clear diagnosis.
That was my question. Did you hear about October 31st? He went to the hospital.
Correct.
Yes or no?
Yes.
And his conditions, and by the way, you knew from your thorough investigation of this case that Michael Cochran hated hospitals with an unbridled passion.
I wouldn't characterize that.
He hated hospitals, all right.
I can't say that I know that.
Did he want to stay in a hospital from all your investigation?
No.
No. But soon enough, on November 2nd, he was again in the hospital, only this time for 5 days, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And for 5 days, which hospital was it, by the way?
I don't know. I can't remember if it was Memorial or General, but it was Charleston Area Medical Center.
Not a bad hospital, is it?
It's a fine, very fine hospital.
And these fine doctors there could not really determine what it was. They claimed there was a mold exposure and all of that, but he had the conditions that didn't have anything to do with mold, right?
Yes.
And those conditions, and we've been through it already on one examination of one officer. Convulsive epilepticus, so he may have had epilepsy, right?
I think there was a whole list of things that might have
Yes, encephalopathy, which is what?
been. I don't know.
Okay. Respiratory failure, seizure, altered mental state, enlarged heart. Those are serious conditions, right?
Yes.
And he was vomiting, he had fever, rash, dizziness, urinary retention. He couldn't go to the bathroom. A sepsis could have set in. That's serious, isn't it?
Yes.
Chronic sinusitis, he couldn't breathe on top of that. Serious stuff. So he stayed in the hospital, and then when he came out of the hospital, isn't it true that he told everybody he was not going back? True or not?
I don't know. I have been told that, yes.
Yeah. And you knew that he was using supplements, right?
I don't know that. I was told that by the defendant.
Okay. Well, you did. You looked at his computers and all of that, right? Or their computers, his computers, when you did the search.
Yes, we did seize computers and cell phones.
Well, Mr. Cochran started in 2017, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, corresponding with the Advocare International. What was that company?
I'm not familiar with that company.
Well, maybe not too many people are familiar with it, detective, because that was one of the companies that may have provided him with the substances that the American government wouldn't want to know about. Did you check it out?
No, I did not.
Okay. How about, well, we know Amazon.com, KYDC LLC. He started that in 2015. What did he purchase from them?
What year was that?
2015. I think he started in 2015.
We wouldn't have looked at it, was been outside the scope, I think, of anything we were looking at.
Well, but yet you're charging this woman with murder by poison, and you don't want to know what kind of substances this man had after you found two suspicious substances in their home?
Well, I knew the one suspicious substance, the enclomiphene citrate, the bottle labeled enclomiphene citrate. The defendant, the first time I interviewed her, told me that Michael Cochran overdosed on that morning on the 6th, and that's what led to his condition and ultimate death.
Well, obviously, you have, well, we'll come to that in a second. You have no evidence, sir, that she injected him with anything. You don't have any of that evidence, do you? You don't have any punctures, you don't have any syringes, you don't have any of it, do you?
Have you seen any punctures in
On his body?
No.
You don't have any syringes?
No.
No. And you also know, in your thorough investigation of this case, that Humalog, and you heard this testimony as you were sitting here today, acts in a delayed fashion, 15 to 30 minutes after somebody's injected, that insulin takes effect. Yes or no? You heard that. Yes or no?
I'm trying to remember what was testified to, and I don't want to sit here and try to repeat testimony, but I want to answer your question. That sounds consistent with what was testified to here earlier.
And so I kind of want to know, detective, if the events of February the 6th somehow comport with what you believe them to be. On the 6th of February, I submit to you that my client is alone in a house with Michael Cochran, right? In the morning.
At some time that morning, yes,
Sometime
they both returned to the home and were there together alone.
Kids go to school. She goes to a doctor. He goes to a coffee place, Starbucks, and they're happily at home. Now, I submit to you that she comes from, say, he's in the kitchen, and she stabs him or jabs him with a syringe full of insulin. He doesn't drop to the floor immediately, does he?
I would have no way of answering that.
Well, you heard the testimony here of the experts that insulin has a delayed reaction, 15 to 30 minutes, right?
Yes, I believe that's what the doctor
So
said.
this woman jabs him, this athlete, and this little girl stabs him with that insulin, and his reaction is, "Thank you, honey. May I have another one?" Now, come on, detective. She would stab him, and his first reaction was, "What the heck was that?"
Actually, she told me that he had been sleeping for 45 minutes to an hour prior to his medical event that morning.
But we've established that it could not have happened in the bed upstairs, could it?
She said he was sleeping on the couch.
So she injected him, and he didn't wake up, right? Is that your testimony?
No, that's not my testimony.
Okay, so she jabs him in the kitchen, and he has 15 minutes to half an hour to react to it, and he does nothing? Is that your testimony here today? He
No.
does nothing but drops on the floor after waiting for half an hour?
No, that's not my testimony.
Well, wouldn't it a normal person who got jabbed by, and by the way, that could not have happened in silence. It would be one of those, "You son of a gun, you know, I'm gonna stab you, I'm gonna kill you, you've done this to me," or whatever. That usually doesn't happen in silence, that type of action. If I stab you, I wouldn't be doing it in silence, would I? So this woman stabs him, true? And then he has 15 minutes to 30 minutes to react.
Objection, Your Honor, this is entirely speculation, and he's placing testimony in the witnesses now.
Well, I think we've gone too far
Okay.
along this line. Let's please move on, Mr. Victor.
Mr. Bledsoe, she wasn't there in the apartment in her house with just Michael. Soon enough, there were about 9 people milling around that house, right? 2 workers, right?
Yes, Mr. Bowen and Mr. Miller were the first to arrive
Okay.
sometime between, I think, around close to 12:30.
Who else?
John Hamilton arrived shortly after they did.
The sister also.
I'm not sure exactly what time she got there.
But she did get
It was
there.
later in the day,
With her boyfriend.
yes.
And then there was Mr. Davis. So let me
Finally,
ask-
yes.
So let me propose this scenario for you. The defendant who is planning to kill her husband goes to Miss Davis and asks for a murder weapon, right? The insulin.
There was a text between them where the defendant procured a bottle of insulin from Miss Davis, yes.
So if she, for example, wanted to kill him with a gun, she wouldn't have obtained a gun from a third person, right?
Objection, Your Honor,
All right.
speculation.
Sustained.
Okay? Would you agree with me, Mr. Bledsoe, that she just brought 2 people into the potential case against her by asking for the insulin and having the insulin delivered by another person to her home? So now she has 2 witnesses against her, right?
The witnesses could be for or against her.
Okay. And would you also agree with me that all of these people who came later to the house could also be the witnesses against her? Right?
As I stated, for or against.
You heard the testimony that this type of medication cannot kill. That this type of medication, the Humalog, is not a deadly substance.
Objection, Your Honor, that was not anyone's testimony.
Sustained.
Right? You don't have any evidence to suggest, Officer Bledsoe, that my client injected Mr. Cochran later in the day when all of these people were present. Do you?
I think the evidence that was testified to by Dr. Krieger and Dr. Uribe support the theory that was possible. Yes.
Possible? Then I will ask you here today and under oath, sir. Point me in the direction of my client injecting anybody with insulin while all these 7 or 8 or 9 people were present. What time, under what circumstances, where, and with what syringe and what insulin? Point it to the jury. Tell the jury.
Yes. I can't answer that.
Because you don't know. You don't have any of that evidence, do you?
Just refer to my previous answer about the evidence.
All right. No. Hold on. We'll get to it. At the time of, you remember that this case had been dismissed once, pending the second, the autopsy, right?
Which autopsy are you referring to, sir?
Well, the second autopsy upon the second exhumation of Mr. Cochran.
I wasn't a part of the second exhumation in any way.
Okay? At the time this case was indicted in 2023, all your evidence suggested that there was no insulin involved in this case. True?
No,
No?
it's not true.
Well, medical evidence by Dr. Kubitschek. What did it tell you?
You have to be more specific which medical
Well, you heard him
evidence.
testify. There was no evidence of the intentional homicide, right?
I believe his report reflected that it was undetermined.
Right. Prior to Dr. Krieger and her involvement in this case, point me to the evidence, medical evidence, that insulin was involved in this case. You don't have any.
I think the blood glucose level of Michael Cochran would be considered medical evidence that
When and by whom?
at Raleigh General Hospital on the February the 6th date when he was taken there.
Show me the evidence that would indicate that, or show the jury the evidence, that the Raleigh General Hospital believed Michael's death as a homicide or suspicious for homicide.
That was not.
How can he answer that?
I agree. The court has to sustain the objection.
Okay. Then you have Dr. Krieger, whom the prosecutor hired, and Dr. Uribe, and these two came up with the concept of insulin injection being the murder weapon, right?
I don't believe I heard either one of them testify that to a murder weapon.
Well then, from your thorough investigation of this case, Mr. Bledsoe, how was this poison administered?
I can't answer that.
Can't answer that. Now, I want to ask you something else. You testified, in this case, that, and you testified before the grand jury, right? In this case.
Yes, sir.
And the gist of your testimony before the grand jury was that Michael was about to find out the whole scope of my client's financial improprieties, right?
Are you referring directly to my grand jury testimony?
Well, I mean, all right, forget your grand jury. You believe that Michael was about to find out about my client being a dishonest fraud who deceived even him, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And somehow she killed him because he was going to do what? He was going to run to the feds. He was going to expose her. He was going to kill her himself. What the heck was he going to do when he learned all of this?
I have no way of knowing. I never got the opportunity to ask him.
Well, but Mr. Bledsoe, we're looking at a person who has been married to his high school sweetheart for 17 years, who has 2 children with her, and all of a sudden he finds out that this sweetheart is cheating. She's a fraud, right? Well, first reaction, wouldn't the first reaction be, well, let's talk about it, honey. What happened? Let's think about it. Let's call a lawyer, right?
Your Honor, we're speculating again.
Well,
We're going down the road that we probably shouldn't, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
she had no reason to kill him because we have no idea what this man would have done, even if she told him, honey, I'm a cheat, she had no reason to kill him.
No, I wouldn't agree with that.
No, she had the reason to kill him because he was going to do what? He was going to kill her? What the heck? Officer, come on.
No, I never said that he was going to kill her.
Well, what was he going to do? So that she had to take such a drastic measure as to kill him.
Objection, Your Honor. This has already been asked and answered. He said already that he did not know what Michael was going to do because he never got a chance to ask him.
I'll allow that question to stand. Answer if you can, officer.
Could you repeat that, please?
What would he do if he learned that she was a cheat?
I don't know what he would have done.
Okay. Now, you talked to several witnesses in this case, including Mr. Treadway, right?
Mr. Treadway?
Yes.
That's not correct.
You didn't?
I sure wanted to and attempted to, but he refused to meet and speak with me.
Okay. How about Mr. Bowen?
Could you be more, Jason Bowen? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Did Mr. Oh, let me see. Where's Mr. Bowen's testimony? Did Mr. Bowen tell you that in February of 2019, shortly before Michael's death, Michael appeared foggy, out of it, loopy. You remember that?
Is that being taken directly from an interview that I did
We
with you?
can, yeah, it is. We
Yes,
can play
that-
it. And you
yes.
remember now?
Yes, that sounds accurate.
Okay. That Michael was sweating. Michael was off balance. Michael wasn't himself. Remember that?
I don't remember verbatim, no, but that sounds consistent, yes.
Okay. You remember a situation when Mr. Davis testified that Michael, I think it was in January of 2019, Michael was doing some kind of a job repairing somebody's light fixtures, right?
I believe he was assisting Mr. Davis with the installation of a ceiling fan, as I recall.
And appeared to be completely out of it.
No, that's not accurate.
Now he was confused.
I don't remember exactly how Mr. Davis described that. I know he wasn't overly concerned about it because he laughed and told me, he said, but man, he said, we got ceiling fan installed. So it didn't rise to a level of great concern for Mr. Davis, but he felt it was necessary for us to know that.
Do you remember talking to Michael Davis about this case?
To who? I'm sorry.
To Michael, I'm sorry, to Chris Davis.
Chris Davis, yes.
Do you remember having Mr. Davis advising you that Michael Cochran in February of 2019 appeared to mentally struggle while assisting him with the installation of a ceiling fan?
Yes, that's what I just
That's
described.
in your report.
Yes.
He also described Mr. Cochran as having outbursts of stress and anger. And he never observed that before in Michael. Do you remember that?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. You knew that Michael was using all kinds of supplements, right?
I didn't know that. I was told that by the defendant, yes.
Well, Mr. Bowen, for that matter, told you that Michael took as many as 35 supplements a day. We can play that statement.
If you're saying that came from his statement, then yes, I'll agree with that.
Mr. Bowen also said that Michael used a dropper to administer enclophamine. Remember that? He would take a couple of drops at a time.
Did he name that specific substance?
Substance being discussed, and the substance being discussed, from what I understand, was enclophamine.
I don't recall that directly, but
Okay.
if
Now, do you remember a witness, and I think it was maybe Mr. Bowen, who told you that Michael got confused in a grocery store, didn't know where he was, couldn't recognize his car in a parking lot.
I believe that, I'm not sure where the location was. I believe the way he characterized that is Mr. Cochran couldn't remember where he parked his vehicle.
I see. Did you know that Michael Cochran apparently hated Panera Bread, the restaurant?
No, I did not.
Of course. And a witness testified, the testimony would be that he actually went there and didn't know where he was. Would that surprise you?
Who said that?
That would be Mr. Treadway.
Again, I would have been glad to talk to Mr. Treadway, but he refused.
Okay. Wouldn't it be fair to say, Mr. Bledsoe, that Michael wasn't himself the last couple of months between the time he was in a hospital and the time when he actually collapsed in a home?
Yes, I believe that's fair to say. He was definitely exhibiting signs, I think, stress over not being able to find out where his money was that
No,
was supposed
sure.
to be in the bank.
Sure, I understand that. But he also exhibited some serious illnesses, and he was prescribed some serious medication. And I'd like to ask you whether you know whether he was ever diagnosed with seizures and acute encephalopathy.
I don't recall if he was specifically diagnosed with that or not.
Well, did you read the report of Dr. Ward? I mean, it's in the discovery. Just give it to us. You gave it to us.
I'm sure that, yes, that I reviewed those documents. It's been many years ago, and sitting here right now to recall it off the top of my head.
So if he had an acute condition of seizures, encephalopathy, and was prescribed medication that I probably cannot even pronounce, lamotrigine, serious medication against seizures, anticonvulsant, would that surprise you? He had that condition?
Without actually seeing the documents and being able to know exactly how it's phrased and see the exact verbiage, I can't really say if it would surprise me or not. I know he sought treatment and was treated for various symptoms and possibilities of different medical conditions, but I don't ever remember seeing a clear diagnosis that definitively said this is exactly what's wrong with Michael Cochran.
He was treated to the extent that he refused to take the medication. Did you know that?
I have been told that.
You've been told that. He refused to take what medication, sir?
It was referred to as seizure medication.
That's not good, is it?
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and take our afternoon break at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. We'll break for 10 or 15 minutes or so. You may go with the bailiff to your jury room now. All right, we'll break for 10 or 15 minutes. I don't need to admonish you again, Lieutenant.